Got another juggernaut of a rock and roll record that's done by the Rolling Stones. It's only rock and roll, but I like it. Yes, indeed. Undercover of the Night. The album Undercover, Rolling Stones at number 10 on my fantasy playlist. Up 8 from 18. Fantasy playlist, November 20th, 1983. A political song. A song referencing the death squads in Latin America. This was the era when Ronald Reagan's administration was back in the Contras and Nicaragua, right-wing rebels against the Sandinista, socialist Sandinista government, and there was a lot of worry. I remember 1981, Dan Rather, about 3 or 4 or 5 months after, it was in the summer of '81, it's a few months after he became anchor of CBS Evening News when he replaced Walter Cronkite, who retired earlier in 1981. And I was a big Walter Cronkite fan back in the day. But I remember Dan Rather was doing a special report about, was it possible that Central America would become another Vietnam for the United States? And because Reagan was a big supporter of the Contras back in the day. Of course, you probably remember the Iranian Contra affair later on in the 1980s. But anyway, this particular record, though, Mick Jagger was thinking more of Argentina and Chile, and he was heavily influenced by a book. Did a little research on the book. It's by William Burroughs. It's called Cities of the Red Night, which was published in 1981 as part of a trilogy, a red light trilogy by William Burroughs. And he wrote, he was a brilliant lyricist. Mick Jagger. Let me read you a few of the lyrics of this record, boy. This is, hear the screams from Center 42, loud enough to bust your brains out. The opposition's tongue is cut in two. Keep off the streets cause you're in danger. Oh boy, he's hitting that. I remember seeing some vivid footage, from some pictures of some of the violence, some of the death squads down in Nicaragua and El Salvador back in the day. Here's another line, quote unquote, Mick Jagger, the genius of Mick Jagger, just flooding right out into the lyrics of this record. 100,000 desperados lost in the jails in South America. Curl up, baby, curl up tight, curl up, baby, keep it all out of sight. Now, the thing about the Cities of the Red Light by William Burroughs, it was about more or less sexual and political repression. And here we go, the sex police. Back to the song. The sex police are, quote, the sex police are out there on the streets. Make sure the past laws are not broken. The race militia has got itchy fingers all the way from New York back to Africa. The song did well, but apparently to Mick Jagger it didn't do well enough, because to him the political songs just didn't really do as well. But this was top 10, though, this particular record. Not the biggest Rolling Stones record, probably not their best known record, not by any means, but it did substantial, got some substantial uh, airplay back in the day. Now, I want to read you a quote. This was a quote I came across, if I could come across it. This was by William Burroughs himself, which was kind of similar, a little bit similar to the lyrics I just read to you from the Rolling Stones record. This was from a letter that he was writing to someone back in 1966, and it's referencing. Anyway, here it goes. Quote, my latest literary project is a tour de force about a Chinese office in Tibet, a description of his training in Academy 23 and what he finds in the monasteries would make a buzzard crack his carrion, deliberately using places I've never been to, and that buzzard crack his carrion reminds me a little bit of that line, loud enough to bust your brains out. And you can kind of see the parallels between the Burroughs novel and this record Undercover of the Night, which was basically written mostly by Mick Jagger. Wrote this record Undercover of the Night. Most of this, now he started writing this song, Mick Jagger did, late 1982 in Paris, and started working. This was when they started working on this album Undercover. They had that huge album before that with Tattoo You. Remember Start Me Up and Hang Fire and Waiting on a Friend was a beautiful record. But let me get back to this record, Undercover Tonight. Started working on this record at the Hit Factory in New York City, which that particular hit factory in New York City closed down in 2005, but boy, a lot of people worked there. Bruce Springsteen recorded much of his Born in the USA album there. John Lennon worked on his Double Fantasy album there. And it was Stevie Wonder, Songs of a Key Alive. A lot of it recorded at the Hit Factory. Demi Lovato, Jennifer Lopez also recorded there at the Hit Factory. I mean, in New York City, although there's another one in Miami, I believe, from what I've read about it. Well, I guess that's it. Boy, I just, boy, one thing about Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, they written some genius lyrics. Rolling Stones. I mean, there's a reason why what the Rolling Stones are probably one of the best bands that ever came out. And some people think that they're the greatest band, and well, that's pretty tough coming up against the Beatles. But boy, they're way up there in the stratosphere of genius and greatness. Rolling Stones at number 10, Undercover of the Night. Fantasy Playlist, November 20th, 1983.